Part 2. From Society to Community. No man is an island. John Donne. In the second half of this book, we will widen our scope from children to society in general. We will consider a few organizing principles of modern society and suggest ways of living and working together that better fulfill our genetic expectation and are based on compassion. We will have a look at some of the assumptions underlying our modern society and see how they create scarcity and discrimination. We will include reflections on economics, development, and inclusivity. A recurring theme will be our social nature and the need for connection. Modern society often seems to go against these genetic expectations. How do we go from modern society, characterized by loose, impersonal, and indirect social ties, to community with warm, close-knit social relationships? In short, how do we create a new humanity and live together in harmony? Chapter 5. Collaboration or competition. The ideal community would be a place where human relationships, which are normally based almost exclusively on competition and strife, would be replaced by relationships of emulation in doing well, of collaboration, and real brotherhood. Mira Alfasa, the mother. If we feel abundant, we will freely share our resources and will have no problem working together with others. However, the prevalent feeling of scarcity in the world leads us to compete rather than collaborate with each other. If we feel we do not have enough, we will try to have more or be better than others. If there is an apparent scarcity of resources, we have to compete for them. In this chapter, we will have a closer look at the nature of competition and its counterpart, cooperation, and how both affect us. The fundamental question is, are we humans by nature cooperative or competitive? And how do we drop competition and create a compassionate society where everyone is a winner? Competition for life. Competition is omnipresent in our society today. We call life a rat race, and loser is one of our most common insults. We give a huge value to being better than the rest. Our media constantly glorify the most successful, the richest, and the most beautiful. Psychoanalyst and cultural critic Erich Fromm sums it up quite poignantly. Everybody is struggling for the best places, even though only a few were chosen to attain them. In this scramble for success, the social and moral rules of human solidarity break down. The importance of life is being first in a competitive race. Competition starts in school, where students compete for the best grades, and continues in the workplace, where people compete for the best position and the highest income in the company, and companies then compete for higher profits. And even in our free time, we continue to compete, playing competitive games or watching sports. 22 people running after a ball captures millions of people's attention. Why would it be so important that this ball ends up in a net on either side? It is just sports. Yet we give huge respect and privilege to these 22 people, and they inspire countless kids all over the world to try and achieve the same. We seem to think that winning in this competition will give us lasting happiness. But that is not true. As we discussed in the introduction, external factors are only minor determinant of our happiness. When we win, we feel temporarily happy, but soon revert back to our previous mental state. This has been shown, for instance, with lottery winners. Moreover, as we learned in the last chapter, competition undermines our intrinsic motivation. Scientists have even linked competition to depression. If our prevailing mental state is a state of scarcity, we can forever try to fill it up, but it will be to no avail. It is like trying to fill a bottomless pit. As long as we feel scarcity, we will feel the need to compete. What will bring us lasting happiness is changing to a mindset of abundance and drop competing altogether. Our preoccupation with competition is unfortunate because I believe it does not lead us to the best expression of our human potential. Competition makes us waste lots of resources. We spend our energy comparing ourselves with others, trying to do better than them or find their weak spots. I know people who spend their energy trying to hurt other people's projects, so that if they will not succeed themselves, at least the others will not either. Or just look at how countries are competing to have a better economy or military supremacy. So many resources are wasted in the process. Just imagine a world where everybody's goal would be to collaborate better. How different things would be. Instead of comparing ourselves with others, we better turn our look inside and try to understand ourselves more deeply. This way, we can improve ourselves and be the best version of ourselves we can possibly be. When we compete, our sense of accomplishment comes from beating someone else. When we stop competing, our accomplishment can be to express ourselves in the most authentic and profound way. Being true to ourselves and realizing our inner potential is much more rewarding. I believe that human beings, as a species, reach their highest potential only if they collaborate. It is through collaboration that we get the best out of each other and achieve the most. If we work together, we can find a way that everyone can contribute to the best of their abilities. The whole is greater than the sum of its parts. As Bill Morrison, founder of the permacultural movement, writes, "Cooperation, not competition, is the very basis of existing life systems and of future survival." Psychological research shows that companies that encourage teamwork and cooperation thrive, while individual incentive and bonus schemes which create competition undermine overall productivity. We humans are and always have been a social species. We cannot achieve anything without the help of others. From the day we are born, we're dependent on others. It is through others we learn to walk, talk, and do everything we need in order to survive and thrive on this planet. We cannot achieve anything by ourselves. In Chapter 7, we will explore humankind's social nature more in depth. No competitive games. In Sadhana Forest, we try to create an environment which supports collaboration as one of its core values and has no competition. One of the ways we do this is by not allowing any competitive games. We do not need to try and be better than others in order to entertain ourselves. At first, this can be hard for volunteers to understand. Yet, after a while, they realize that when they cooperate and help each other out, they can also have a good time, and everyone actually performs much better. It can be so much more rewarding to try and get the best out of yourself and others instead of trying to be better. Interestingly, hunter-gatherer and small farming societies also do not have any competitive games, and their members only play in cooperative ways. Our volunteers at Sadhana Forest find it especially hard to understand why they cannot play chess. Chess is a gentleman's game, highly intellectual, and good for the brain, they say. But it does not matter whether you use your brain or not. What matters is what you use it for. Chess was originally a war game. Bobby Fischer, one of the game's most revered players of all time, reportedly said, "Chess is war over the board. The object is to crush the opponent's mind. Chess is about trying to identify your opponent's weaknesses and attacking them. You try to attack your opponent where it hurts most, the king." And this is how it usually goes in society. We use our brains to try and outsmart others. We identify others' weak points and attack them. That is all part of our scarcity-driven competitive mindset. Born collaborators. This pervasive competitiveness seems to be based on the idea that humans are naturally selfish and are purely interested in their own pleasure at the expense of others. Homo hominio lupus. Man is a wolf to man, as the saying goes. This idea seems to be deeply rooted in our modern Western culture. In the present paragraph, we will give a brief overview of some of the philosophical and scientific theories that brought selfishness to the center stage over the past few centuries. We will also have a brief look at some recent research that has begun to question the premise of the universal selfishness. In the past decades, many researchers in various fields have come to realize what spiritual traditions have always known. We were born to be our brothers and sisters' keepers. In the words of the Dalai Lama, if we look at the very pattern of our existence from an early age until our death, we can see the way in which we are fundamentally nurtured by others' affection. Love and compassion are as natural to us as anger and selfishness. Modern philosophers have tried to convince us for a long time that we are self-centered animal running solely after our own interests. Altruism, according to them, would be a fiction, or even worse, immoral. Modern champions of selfishness include Thomas Hobbes, Jeremy Bentham, Friedrich Nietzsche, Sigmund Freud, Herbert Spencer, and more recently, Ayn Rand. However, thinkers as early as Joseph Butler and David Hume have made a case for the altruistic nature of mankind. In the mid-18th century, Hume wrote, "The most obvious objection to the selfish hypothesis is that as it is contrary to common feeling and our most unprejudiced notions, there is required the highest stretch of philosophy to establish so extraordinary a paradox. To the most careless observer, there appear to be such disposition as benevolence and generosity, such affections as love, friendship, compassion, gratitude." Sociologists, such as George Simmel, have questioned whether a society could really be based on the idea of everyone to themselves. And even historians like Rutger Bregman are now rewriting history in terms of kindness and cooperation. In modern science, evolution theory, and notably its survival of the fittest, have often been seen as evidence for ruthless competition in nature. But in fact, Charles Darwin, the father of evolution theory, argued that collaboration was probably one of humankind's strongest assets and ensured its survival as a species. Darwin saw sympathy as a basic social instinct. Sympathy is of high importance to all those high animals that aid and defend each other. It will have been increased through natural selection. For those communities which included the greatest number of the most sympathetic members would flourish best and rear the greatest number of offspring. We did not achieve our success as a species through extraordinary speed, muscular strength, or sharp teeth. On their own, humans cannot withstand the force of nature or wild animals. Homo sapiens became what it is today because of its ability to collaborate with others. The more pessimistic interpretation of Darwin came about through social Darwinists such as Thomas Huxley and Herbert Spencer, who actually coined the term survival of the fittest. They applied Darwin's theory of evolution to human society and believed only the fittest competitors in society would survive. In this way, they believed the population would improve. In the 1960s, the work of George C. Williams and Richard Dawkins' famous book, The Selfish Gene, further propagated the selfish interpretation of evolution. More recently, however, evolutionary scientists like David Solon Wilson, Elliot Sober, and Martin Nowak have brought Darwin's vision of cooperation in groups, improving natural selection, back into the limelight. Ethologists have also found cooperation to be essential in the animal realm, most notably primatologist Franz D. Wahl. Exofar Arna Ness writes, "The so-called struggle of life and survival of the fittest should be interpreted in the sense of ability to coexist and cooperate in complex relationships, rather than ability to kill, exploit, and suppress." Psychological research of the past decades have started to emphasize the basic empathic and collaborative nature of our species. As one researcher puts it, ours is the only species where one observes cooperation that is strong, regular, diverse, risky, extensive, between individuals who share no familial ties. Psychologists have found that children as early as 1 year old already exhibit spontaneous behavior of mutual aid, and 6-month-olds already can show preference for cooperative behavior. The conclusion is clear. United we stand, divided we fall. It is cooperation that makes us thrive as a species. We achieve our best results only if we cooperate. Neurologists have now identified the nerve cells, hormones and parts of our brain responsible for empathic and cooperative behavior. The hormone, oxytocin, for instance, has been associated with empathy, cooperation, and generosity. And when we see someone go through an experience, so-called mirror neurons in our brain make us feel as if we are going through the exact same experience. The economy of cooperation. The mainstream neoclassical economy of the 20th century saw our species as a homo economicus, a rational, self-centered actor interested only in maximizing their own profit. As mentioned before, our economy takes competition on scarce resources as its starting point. Adam Smith, founding father of modern economics, believed that if everyone ran after their own interest, this would eventually benefit the whole of society. More so, even then, when people would try to help each other out. Their behavior would be guided by what he famously called an invisible hand. One of his contemporaries puts it quite succinctly: private vices, public benefits. In other words, people are intrinsically greedy, and that is not such a bad thing. Today, these thoughts are still very much alive. Economists talk about the axiom of greed. Main character, Gordon Gekko, in the movie Wall Street, famously exclaimed that greed is good. And what about economics Nobel Prize laureate, Milton Friedman? Few trends could so thoroughly undermine the very foundations of our free society as the acceptance by corporate officials of a social responsibility other than to make as much money for their stockholders as possible. Yet these ideas have also begun to be questioned in the past decades. Do we really take decisions in such a rational, egoistical way? Amartya Sen, another economics Nobel Prize laureate, writes, "Why should it be uniquely rational to pursue one's own self-interest to the exclusion of everything else? To argue that anything other than maximizing self-interest must be irrational seems altogether extraordinary." Research now proves that people generally do take ethical considerations into account when making economic decisions and often actually prefer to behave cooperatively. Game theory experiments by economist Ernst Furr and others have shown that people will generally trust each other and cooperate for a greater benefit, even if by doing so, they may be putting themselves at risk of losing their own investment. Corporations only break down if free riders, people who profit without contributing, can get away without being exposed or held accountable. But people are known to let go of part of their profit to prevent this from happening. One famous example of the debate around human cooperation is the so-called tragedy of the commons. In 1968, Garrett Hardin coined this term in a famous article in Science. He believed that if you let a group of people jointly manage common resources, they will try to take advantage of each other and overexploit those commons. For a long time, this was the main line of thinking in economics. However, historic research by economics Nobel Prize winner Elinor Ostrom and others has proven this to be a myth. Communities are perfectly capable and can be in fact very good at governing common resources jointly and have done so throughout human history. Think about it. Do small communities really overexploit resources? Or is it more likely that big private landowners and companies do so?
This is Orville Radio, Voices from the City of Dawn.